Okay, everybody, it's Michael E. Cullen II.
And I'm Sesame and Carta from the All Too Real 2 podcast. We're passionate about movies, TV, and pretty much all things pop culture.
Dive into the chaos of failed sitcoms, direct-to-video sequels, and the quirky realms of cinema and TV.
Join us every Thursday for your dose of All Too Real 2 entertainment.
We'll guide you through debates like whether Howard the Duck qualifies as a superhero.
Ponder if Larry the Cable Guy could be the new Rock or Schwarzenegger.
Discover if some shows and movies should have stayed in the cutting room.
Ever heard of a sitcom featuring that dictator with the funny mustache? Well, we watched it.
We're dedicated to unraveling the peculiarities of pop culture, sometimes with awesome guests.
So, if you're into the eccentric world of pop culture,
listen and subscribe to All Too Real 2.
Available wherever you find podcasts
and on Age of Radio.
Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. Today, I am joined by veteran and debut author Anthony Dyer. Anthony is the author of the book Moonchild, and this book talks about the journey in war, trauma, and finding your purpose. So we're going to be talking to Anthony about his book, and Anthony, thank you for your service, and we're going to be talking to him about everything that he's up to and gonna be up to. So Anthony, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Honored to be here.
Why don't you start off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I grew up in a small town in Appalachia there, and that's the roots part of my book. Small town called Silva in western North Carolina, and I often joke, that you could probably throw a baseball across my whole town when I was growing up. And, small community, but the sense of community was strong, and, everybody had everybody's back. And, I get to a point my senior year where I had really no direction, no guidance, didn't have good grades. Didn't want to go to college, and my dad gives me the typical dad talk of like, I'm a grown man, it's time to either get a job, go to college, or get out. And so I talked to a Navy recruiter at first, and he's talking about being on a boat for 6 months, and then an Army recruiter. And I was like, what, I'm gonna talk to my dad about sort of the quality of life of the Air Force, and TDYs, and golf clubs and good chow halls and all that good stuff. And there I was, July 18th, on my first flight ever to or fixed wing flight to San Antonio, Texas. And I get to about 10 years into my career, about halfway through, and I realized I was sort of sitting on the sidelines with the war on terror. And I was at home, actually on leave at a pizza parlor, and I look out and I see the same cracks in the road. And what I'm talking about is the same people doing the same things. And, I realized I was sitting on that same sideline. And as I want to leave cracks, I want to leave craters. And that's when I decided to join the mighty 16th Special Operations Squadron and start flying on the AC-30 gunship. And retired 1 December of 21. And, I lost my identity there when I was getting out. And that's where a lot of the, losing that who I was a lot of the problem. And that's when I started to write. And now I got a book called Moonchild.
Yeah, what kind of tell us about that book? What actually made you decide to write it?
Yeah, so when I'm at that last year in my career, I remember I'm in like this personnelist type office, and filling out the infamous DD 214 paperwork. And I remember like just leaving this office, and like I remember there wasn't a door handle on the other side, so you could walk in, but you could walk out, but you can never get back in. And so at that point, I realized like the whole light at the end of the tunnel, and the whole reason for being a gunship person on the AC-130 is to provide close air support for those super ninjas, your Green Berets, your SEALs and Rangers, and make sure they get home to their family. And it was an awesome responsibility. And then I realized that sense of relevance was gone. And then at that point, I'd start drinking like what was a pint on the weekends turned into a pint of, hard alcohol at night just to go to sleep with sleeping meds, you name it, man. And my wife gave me the ultimatum of it's either her and the daughter or the bottle. And so that's when I picked up a pen and, started putting pen to pad. And then with that, I got help with the prolonged exposure therapy. And part of that process is telling your story. So it's sort of like we're doing now, and basically getting comfortable being uncomfortable and talking about the hard parts. And from pen to paper, and about 7 months later, I had a book in hand. So,
Well, when you were writing the book, what was the hardest moment to revisit? When you were writing it.
I would say definitely. There was a part of my career where I went to do the Castovac missions on the 41st Rescue Squad on the helicopter, and it was 8 June of 2018. We were in East Africa, and I tell people we saw the best side of combat search and rescue that day, and also the worst side, meaning we saved five guys, and then one Eagle, one American, when he got on the operating table, had passed away, and so that one that stuck with me forever, and I had a hard time with that, whether it's survival's guilt or all the trauma that comes with something like that, and just it really surfaced towards that last year in the Air Force there, and talking to the psychiatrist there, I went in there with a chip on my shoulder and like, what does this lady know about about healing, the mind and war and stuff like that, and she gave me the cliche analogy of like you wouldn't call a dentist to fix your car, right? And at that point, I was okay. I'll give it a chance, and so glad I did. I feel like I'm a better father, better person, better airman, better wingman.
Well, how did writing this book kind of help you therapeutically processing your feelings?
Yeah, I would say it helped me say the loud parts out loud. There's some very uncomfortable moments in there where I wanted to drink, and I'm getting into those dark moments, especially that mission, and the things that I was always turning my mind away from. I just decided to face all that trauma, and also I thought about the fact that like helping is healing. If I write this story, and if one veteran, when they get out, they have a similar struggle, and they read this book and get help, then and that's a blessing, and that's really for two reasons: to show America, rest of America, this is what happens when you're sleeping, these type of things, and then also for someone else to get help. That'd be a win.
Well, let's talk about the title of the book, Moonchild. Tell us what that title means to you.
Yeah, so it's really symbolic for me. One of my favorite poems there I start off the book with is a Stay Wild Moonchild by Rita Clint. And then the moon's always been like my lighthouse. I remember flying, especially in Afghanistan's, and you have this 100% illume, this full moon, if you will, and it highlighted the terrain, and we have in flying what you call get well points. So if you ever get lost in like an orbit, like the gunship does, I can say, okay, I know the moon was on this side of the orbit, and so it always got me home, if you will. And also the thing about the moon is like, you know, on those darkest nights, that's when it burns the brightest. When everything's against you, whether it's the weather, emergency procedures, communications, whatever the case is, just life in general. That's when that moon burns the brightest on those darkest nights.
Okay, well, you were a special missions aviator, so describe to the listeners what a special missions aviator actually does.
Yep. So the Special Missions Aviator back in 2012 to 2013, the Air Force created this Swiss Army knife in the sky, and what I mean by that is they combined what was the aerial gunner career field with the flight engineer career field with the loadmaster career field. So you have one person doing all three of those tasks on, for example, the AC 130 and the 16th Special Operations Squadron.
Okay, well, let's talk about the disconnection that the veterans feel once they finally come back. Why do you feel like that they feel that disconnection when they return home?
I think it's because the sense of relevance, the loss of identity. That's honestly, I get a sort of overwhelming the amount of emails that I got from people I used to fly with. Even it's the same struggle. Like we just got over 2 decades of war as well. So that my why was gone. Everything that I considered like was my whole reason for being. Provide that close air support. In my mind, like that was I feel like I was losing my legacy, and legacy has always been important to me, and I'm sure it is to a lot of people. I remember my grandfather asking me like, do you remember your great grandfather's name? And I was honestly, I don't, and the point he was making is, what's this brief mortal life if not the pursuit of legacy? And the point being, there's no U-Haul behind a hearse, so you can't take anything with you. All you can leave is how you're remembered, and I feel like veterans, when we lose that relevance, we feel like we lose part of that legacy.
What do you wish more people understood in regards to PTSD and veteran mental health?
I wish the people that, like, for example, myself, that have it, that realizes it's okay to get help, and I wish that the civilian population would encourage us to get help. And we know our friends more than anybody, our brothers and sisters. And there's a difference between saying like, hey, how's it going, or hey, how you doing really, how you really doing. And to notice those signs and to encourage every veteran to get help, and just remove that sort of concept that comes with that is looked down on. But everybody has to take that tactical knee at one point.
Okay, well, kind of talk to the listeners about the book. Kind of tell them what they can expect when they read it, where they can get it, and what you hope they take away from it when they read it.
Yeah, so I would say that it's a short read, and got a lot of feedback with that. And it's a book that make you laugh and it'll make you cry within the same 2 hours. I call it a Sunday read. And it's all based on the roots and wings, like roots being where I grew up, deep in Appalachia, and sort of the moral and the moral compass that was instilled in me when I was little, taking that with me. And then the wings, I call wings it's the infinite. It lets you touch the face of God. So it's good to know where you come from with the roots part, and it's better to know exactly where you're going. So that's the whole sort of concept behind it, is the roots and wings.
Well, you're now an advocate for aviation and military communities. So talk about the systemic changes you believe that need to take place to be able to help service members better.
And I think they already are taking place. To be honest with you, I know they've developed the preservation of the force and family, or the POTF, uh, concept there, where every squadron, in especially special operations and aviation, you get like a physical therapist, you get a physical trainer, and you get a mental health person you can talk to. So I'll say it's getting better with that. But I would say just remove the thought that, like, it's a bad thing to get help, when all reality, you're making even America a better place when that person seeks help. So again, I would say encourage those people in these uncommon jobs. We're all very normal men and women doing very uncommon, unordinary things, and that it's okay to get help.
Well, how do you feel like humor helped you survive the darkest moments of your life? Because you got some dark humor in your book as well.
Yeah, I would say humor is definitely a big part of my life. I know, Jim Valvano, like, one of his in his ESPN speech there when he had cancer and he was dying. I remember he says one thing you should do every day is laugh, right? And if you can make someone laugh, especially in the darkest corners of the earth, man, then that's a little bright light that spreads. It's contagious. And there was always something about me and pranks and, like, sort of the stuff, the camaraderie that comes with that, as almost like being accepted. So there's definitely some funny pranks and some dark humor in there.
Well, faith became part of the healing arc of your stories. So talk about how faith has changed before you went to combat, and how it has changed who you are now.
I would say faith played the most important role, if I'm being honest. Like, I realized, especially, in the last year in my career, that I had turned to everything except for Jesus. I turned to the mental health thing, which I know that's a big part of it. Friends, family, ways to make more money, all these different things that I thought would help me. And I turned to everything but Jesus. And I talk in there about Matthew 11:28, how I could almost hear Jesus saying that when I was at my rock bottom, crying out. And the most honest conversation I ever had was with myself and Jesus in that mirror that night. And that's when I decided to quit drinking, and be the best husband I could be, the best father I could be, and the best friend I could be to someone. So faith is definitely the cornerstone of my healing process.
Well, let's talk about which one of these were the hardest part, flying the mission in hostile environments, or once the uniform came off, not having that mission driven identity.
Definitely the hardest part was not having the mission driven identity, and that loss of relevance, that sense of purpose was gone. And that's honestly a common thing, with veterans. And once that's gone, you have to find exciting moments in the calm. I'll say that, being the best father, husband, wife, mother, whatever that case is for that person. That's a legacy to me that matters now, being that best person.
Tell us about any upcoming projects that you're working on that listeners need to be aware of.
Yes, I'm doing a project. It's called Operation Song, and it's a place out in Nashville, and they basically pair you up with a writer. And so every veteran has a story, is the sort of the idea behind that. And they'll get your song written and performed. So you get that song out there to get that veteran story out there. And also, I'm developing an app. It's going to be called the Debrief, and the idea behind that is like you can like say it's on your phone, for example. You could speak into it, and it'll with AI sort of soft edit it for you. Then through donations and stuff like that, being a nonprofit, the veteran or this first responder, even they could get their story edited and published for either free or really cheap.
Well, so everybody can keep up with everything that you're up to, throw out your contact info.
Yeah, so my email is anthonyp.dyer@gmail.com, and my Instagram handle is all lowercase Marco_Brolo21.
All right, we'll close this out with some final thoughts. Maybe if there was something I forgot to talk about that you would like to discuss, or any final thoughts you have for the listeners.
The final thoughts I like to say, I always say, like, no matter what you're going through, the worst part of your life, just remember that, Henry Ford once said that an aircraft takes off against the wind, not with it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, well said. So please check out Anthony's book and check out and keep up with everything that he's up to. Follow, rate, review, share this episode to as many people as possible. And also, we just launched a new Living the Dream newsletter, so please go sign up for weekly updates on the show at www.curveball337.com. Thank you for listening and supporting the show. And Anthony, thank you for your service, and thank you for all that you do, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Curtis. It was an honor. Thank you.
For more information on the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, visit www.curveball337.com. Until next time, keep living the dream.